Hello, everybody. It's Phil the Miniature Model Maker coming to you again today. It's currently August 23rd, 2025. If you need a timestamp for the sale on the paints through the Feral Painters YouTube channel and his little thing, after filming the initial reaction video for these Kaleido paints last night and seeing the issues with the red and yellow, I decided I would do another test today. So what I did was took my Warhammer here, who I guess is now one of my test models, using Stynylrez black, gray, and white primer. I primed all of it, higher and lower, just so we can get an idea of what the paints would look like and how they would perform on white primers. I did the same with this Custodes jet bike, black and gray. I didn't do white. Um, and then this guy, I ran the Forge Red and Sunset Orange through my airbrush, and it was a .5 millimeter nozzle set at 30 psi. So that's what I use for priming, and I didn't want to mess about with changing any settings. And we can see what happened here. So these lower legs were the areas where I was getting used to using the paint, and you can see that it definitely pooled. And up here, as I had a better handle on it, it was smoother, but still there was pooling. Now, I will be the very first to admit that I'm no airbrush expert. So don't. I'm merely reporting the results of my test. Um, some ways it did well, and others not. It is still thin. I did not use any thinners or anything on these. Um, you can see here some of these came out better. Again, as I got a little bit more of a handle on how the paint behaved, it did go on much smoother. Um, After looking through some people's videos who are better airbrushers than me, it looks to me like maybe using a little bit lower pressure and a smaller nozzle. So everybody was using a .2 nozzle on theirs, and they had beautiful paint jobs. So I chalk the majority of this pooling up to me using a needle that was too large. There was a lot of paint going through, um, and maybe a little bit too much pressure. So this was the first ever time I used this paint. Anytime I do airbrushing with paints, I'm used to using a citadel that has been thinned. So it's not anywhere as thin as these Kaleido paints. Um, but I want to be completely open and honest. These upper areas, and this is where the white was, it looked great. It's nice and smooth. Um, the It'll be really good for applying decals. So I think once I get a handle on how to better use it through an airbrush, it will be pretty good. I doubt I will be using it through an airbrush though, unless maybe I'm doing a full base coat top to bottom of an artifact. But after what you're about to see, I probably won't be doing that. So I'll put that down. That's the airbrush test. And here's the custodian that I used my brush. And yes, these paints were exactly as thin through the brush today as they were yesterday, even after substantial mixing on the vortex mixer. So I gave them a good minute rotating, alternating between top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom. So expect a substantial amount of settling if you get these. That's a thing. It was especially a thing I noticed with the metallics, and even now it's starting to settle again. I may have to hit that even more on the mixer. So these do settle a lot, just like I use the little mini mixer on these citadel pots that haven't been thinned. You'll need to do the same with these dropper bottles on a vortex mixer. Just expect it. It's not, I don't think that's a bad thing. Once they're in use regularly and are getting mixed regularly, I have a feeling it'll be okay. So that was that. And then as far as actual use, I'll show you here in a minute. I'll put some more on the palette. It behaves very much like a speed paint, a contrast paint. Very, very thin. This is one coat over that, and it just sucks right in to the seams. Both the red and the blue did that over. So here's black down here, and you can see pooling. So I was just slapping it on, and I was treating it more like a normal paint than I would a contrast paint or a speed paint, and let it pool. But if you treat it like a contrast paint, it will behave and give some good effects, which is what we have here. So here's the foot of a Rick Diaz that I had primed. I went and did a what was this? Ulthuan Gray with the sponge. And here's what we've got on there. It is a nice, smooth, gloss speed paint. So if you paint it like a speed paint and treat it like a speed paint, or treat it like a glaze, in as far as properties are concerned, viscosity, how it moves around, it will behave nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and put some more paint, a number of these paints on the palette, and show you guys while I've got it. And then I've got Crash Test Dummy Bob the Crash Test Dummy, because I saw some people applying this, airbrushing this directly over plastic, and figured that might be a good thing to look at too. People airbrushing these paints directly over a plastic spoon, saying, well, it behaves like a lacquer, but it's acrylic. So we'll do a little bit of that too. So starting first, we're going to go with the Forge Red again. Get a little bit on the damp palette. And I'm just going to do a little bit here, because I do actually want to use these for more than just testing. So I've loaded my brush up like I would with a speed paint. And I'm working it fast and smooth. You can see how it wicks quite a bit, which, if you're prepared for it, is actually kind of a nice property, especially if you have models with very small seam lines and detail lines. Now, it's not as viscous as a contrast paint or a speed paint, so you've got a little bit more forgiveness than you do. You can go back a little bit more and wick away pooling. But as soon as it starts drying, yeah, you can see already just like with a contrast paint, you don't want to be going over it too much. Otherwise you'll get pooling. And I'll go ahead and do that just for example here. And we'll leave that and then let the rest of this to dry. And over here I did a little bit of dry brushing, which it worked out surprisingly well. It's a nice, smooth, but very, very thin coat. Almost a filter. You could use it as a filter if you want to dry brush. And we'll do another section, let's say here. And I'm going to dab a little bit off. So it's more of an overbrush than a dry brush, but you can see it smooths out pretty well as long as you work it enough. Maybe I didn't get enough on there. But I've got a light touch and I'm just working it over. So it could potentially be a good filter if that's what you want. Now we'll clean the brush out. The only issue being that this, because it's so thin, it really wicks up into this goat hair brush. So there are those things here. Now let's go ahead and put it over the foot. Ooh, maybe I need to get a little bit more on the brush. Yep, I used up too much. So again, you can see I'm treating it like a normal paint here, and it's not. I loaded my brush normally, so you do need to fill your brush a fair amount, just like you would with a contrast paint. And we'll go over here. But if you do, and if your brush is still got enough paint on it, it'll behave itself well. And like I said, it is a little bit more forgiving than contrast paint as far as reworking it. And now I'll do a little bit of an example of how I used to paint since my D&D minis, with more of a just kind of stipple and fill in. Kind of making a little pool and then pushing that pool around. And if you like slightly textured, not scholarly, not painterly, sketchy style, that will also work for you. So if that's how you like to paint, great. So now let's go ahead and try this over. Let's do a second coat on this because I am curious about that. And watching one of the airbrushers, they said that gallery recommends a 2-part paint to 4-part thinner if you are going to thin it. I assume that's to make sure that the chemicals in the thinner and the probably the hardening agent interact correctly, properly, happily. All right, I'm going to stick this over here to the side. I'm going to leave it kind of horizontal. And while I have the red out, let's go ahead and do another coat over here. I'm making Howling Griffin's custodians, it looks like. Maybe they're the custodians of McDonald's. Could you imagine? Can you imagine there being a McDonald's in the 41st millennium? So, yeah. Let's get a little bit more here, and I'll do another run over this so you can kind of see how it behaves. Again, it really wants to go into those recesses a lot. Now the first coat was pretty glossy, so I'm going to guess that this second coat is going to be even more so. So if you do use it on a Warhammer model where you want it to be more matte, you're going to need to get a matte varnish. This is definitely a gloss paint. But if you like to put transfers on, hey, it's great. So after painting the Warhammer, I would say this is a good slap chop paint, especially if you want to get a bit more detailed. I would not, well, we're going to find out before I say anything more. Let's try the red on here. Bob, the crash test dummy. It feels good, feels like it's going over well. Don't want to let it pool. So keep it moving around. Wick it out where you need to. Move it where you want it. And I have a feeling that these were formulated more for going over a gloss primer, and that the satin semi-gloss and matte primers were done more for other modeling crowds. I know nothing about the company, but I'm going to take a stab and say that they probably started as a car or a car or historical modeling company, or making products for those markets, I should say. Alright, so here we go. I have let this dry a little bit and moving it around. You can see it does start to get those puddles and will tear rather than spread. And that's probably the hardening agent. So this was straight over plastic, and this was over plastic that had been, I had used Tamiya black panel aligner, the enamel. So Oh, I mean, looking at it as it is now, that's kind of a neat effect. The pre-shading, and if you're looking for a more stylized thing, I might use this like this on an artifact. So I think, thank you for giving me the idea. Here we go. Maybe you can see it a little bit better. This is so glossy, and in these lights, it's tough. So that's the red. The yellow behaves exactly the same. So we're gonna let that stay in the dropper bottle. But I'm gonna mix this. What is it? The red copper some more. Since it is difficult to describe, I wanted to show you guys. Oh, that's even more. Come on. It's neat though, in these clear bottles, and with this paint that's thin enough, it actually, you can see it mixing, which is kind of satisfying. But there's no doubt it needs a lot of mixing at first. And I'm going to need to use this here soon. I thought I had it all mixed up until I looked at the bottom. That's going to have to be good enough. So this is red copper. We'll use 3 drops. So first we're going to put it over the Custodes. We'll do it over some of this black. Okay, that is thin. So it's I think it would be better to describe this now that I'm looking at it in person. It's kind of a rose gold before it dries over this black. So I'm going to put it all over some of the gray. Do I have any? Yes, here we go. Well, no, let's here. It's kind of a burnished bronze, rose gold color. Which is rather nice. But again, very thin. You're more pulling the paint around and placing it where you want it than you are using the paint to draw, excuse me, the brush to draw the paint on the surface like you would with a thicker, more viscous acrylic. So any of the standard Citadel, Army Painter, Pro Acryl, all those guys, it's more of a drawing with the paintbrush, and this is more pulling the paint around. It's kind of nice though, and the thinness is good if you don't mind multiple coats. And the metallics seem to be a bit more opaque than the non-metallics. Could just be the mica inside it that's doing that. Maybe not. We'll see. And this is now the zirconium black that I used last night on the chaplain that I was so fond of. But that may have been because it was over a really dark color. And we'll do here. Yes, there's a hair right there. Okay, so yep, it's still wanting to go into the cracks and crevices, but it's covering well. It's got good opacity. So at the moment, this zirconium black is my favorite of the ones that I've tested, of the whole line. Its behavior is ideal. Okay, now the coverage may again be because it's black. That just covers things a lot better. And now the scorched gold. Giving it a little bit more of a shake. Okay. This one has a bit of an odor to it. Almost a stale water. Me. Okay. Let's go ahead and try this here. Alright, okay. Over this gray. It's definitely looking like and behaving more like a glaze or a contrast paint, a very thin other brand acrylic, hobby brand acrylic. But we're now going to dig in and if you're slapping it on like a speed paint, it plays well. Let's put it over here. See where we go. Okay, that's nice. And I will be back in just a moment while this dries. And then we will put some of that on the word bearer. And thanks to some editing magic, I am back. Alright, we put the black over and the things over the custodies. That gold is nice. Wow, this gold is separating quickly. So it's going to need to be mixed up again. Alright, we're going to put some over the word bearer. Okay, so this is nice over trim. You really don't have to apply much pressure and just let the paint kind of flow off the brush and around. Which is going to make trim easy. But you do have to be careful not to let your brush, not to let it get near near the join between the trim and the regular panel, or it's going to just suck right in as it's doing now. Yeah, okay. So that is a risk when doing trim. It's going to flow into the crevices, and you're going to need to do some touching up. Get that hair out of there. And let's go ahead and let's try the black. And that looks just as beautiful as it did on the Chaplain. That would make for the nice base on a barrel as well. Do a little bit here on the leg. Hope you guys can. It doesn't, my camera doesn't focus well enough. You're going to have to just trust my description. They all want to find panel joins or panel lines. And then we'll do the red copper over here. And now I'm just barely touching the tip of my brush to the trim and letting the paint just kind of flow off. Capillary action is strong with these paints. Yeah, oops. I pushed just a little bit too hard, and there we go. Okay. Yeah, not bad there. Let's go ahead and put some on Bob. Just use up what's on the brush. There we go. Okay. And now the black. There's not a whole lot on left on my palette, so we'll do this. Oh, actually, how about we do thrusters? That would be a smart use of it. And indeed, it is. Okay, so this looks very much like a thruster covered in grime. In fact, I think I might have a little bit more left on the palette. Where did I, there I put it. So here is our channel mascot that I'm needing to repaint. So let's go ahead and try some of this over there. Okay, that's nice, and that works very well on these thrusters. And there is some of this Sotek green on the metal, the metallics, and this actually covers it up pretty nicely. Surprisingly, I expected it to not. Okay, so that'll look nice over a lot of these things, and will be oh, that'll look really good on these tubes. So you could almost use this like a wash. Almost. If you thinned it, I bet you could. Because this is thin enough now that I put it over, I think that was Runefang steel, or it's not lead, I don't have lead belcher, what's the other one? I got gun, I don't know, it was one of the gunmetals. That looked pretty good. That was a nice filter. And the last paint I want to do on Bob is going to be the gold. Getting that mixed in. So for those of you who have painted with watercolors, this may be an awful lot like working with a watercolor. It's almost as thin. Okay, and that's dry. So I'm actually going to put some of this over the red to see what happens. Interesting. It's just gliding over the gloss, and is making kind of like a speckled effect, like something you would see a red ornament with gold glitter on it for Christmas or Chinese New Year. That looks very similar. Okay, so that's presenting possibilities for potential use in the future. Rather than putting the metallic under the color, put the color under the metallic. Okay, so something I'm noticing here and now over the bare plastic, this paint, these metallics separate like nobody's business really fast, and I'm seeing pink streaks and then flecks of the metallic color. How does it look over primer? It's generally doing okay over primer, but if you will let it get into a crevice, again, it starts separating. So the red bronze, I think that's what a red copper? Red copper. that could be situational. Neat effect. It's almost like blood, kind of almost, but not quite. The gold is good. One last test because I'm feeling brazen. We'll take this guy. So this is a custodian guard, heavily coated with Agrax Earthshade. Okay, yeah, I see no difference. There's really no difference here. However, if you're the kind of person that likes to do slap chop and you're not a fan of some of the other options for doing metallics, this is a great way to do a Custodes army. And if you have an airbrush, I bet you could even do it do a volumetric undercoat and just airbrush your gold over it. So there we go, folks. The follow-up video. Again, I will do a quick summary. These Gallery Kaleido Paints are formulated specifically for use in an airbrush. You likely want to use them with a 0.2 nozzle and at lower than 30 psi. I'm going to take a guess and say maybe 20 psi, even 15 psi, and a smaller needle because they'll go through. This was a 5 millimeter, 0.5 mil needle at 30 psi, and even then it was kind of far away and it just pooled. So if you're experienced with airbrushing, test it out first, but I'm going to guess it'll behave well for you. It is thin though, you will need to do multiple coats, which for airbrushing is a good thing. Hand brushing, this behaves very much like a contrast paint, except it's not quite as viscous. The medium is different. It will still pool. It is a glossy finish, and it very, very much seeks out panel joints or details. Like again here, this is 2 coats, and it's really, really, really filled in the recesses, but is not so much over the top, which makes it promising for volumetric undercoating, aka slap chop. So don't discard it there if that's a style that you like. And if you treat this like a speed paint, you'll be happy, I think. It does okay if you're doing your mecha over bare plastic. However, if you're going to do that, I would suggest doing an enamel wash, pre-shade, and then put your paint over it and let it pool in the center of the areas, and that shaded area be more where your pre-shade would be along all of these panel lines. You can put the metallics over a color and get something akin to a holiday ornament. Maybe not want to put the metallic down and then the color. If you're going to do that, I would not use the Kaleido metallic, I would use a more robust, something with a thicker medium, like one of the Citadel or Army Painter type paints. Uh, the metallics, especially the red copper, separate out. You can see the color coming out of this when painted directly over plastic. But over primer, or even better, over another paint, it is less pronounced. It still did, because of the thickness of the paint, the amount of paint I was putting down. Okay, we may, we'll do one last thing to see if I can get a thin coat and treat it like a more standard acrylic. Even if you're doing it this way though, you're going to want to have a fairly full belly on your brush. Okay, so I'm doing small controlled strokes. With thin paint, a thin coat. And it's doing okay. It's now more bronze, more copper. It's more of a bronze than a copper than the thicker layer that's like a rose gold. But even here it's starting to separate. And you get almost an iridescent effect. The red copper and likely the tungsten, and what was the other one? The tungsten had green, and was it titanium? Had a little bit of red in it. Be aware of that. There are possibilities for cool effects, but you also need to know how it's going to behave. Don't be caught unawares. So, what is my verdict now versus yesterday? I'd probably give it a 92. Yeah, a 92. Maybe even a 95 if you're using it to its best properties. I would not use it trying to get it to work like the current leading miniature acrylics. It just won't. I think if you're an airbrusher and you are good with it you're going to find a lot of success. I think that's good. It really is where this paint is going to shine. But there are interesting applications with hand brushing. Just don't use a sponge. Use a brush, and you should find yourself okay. So my final verdict: 92, because of some of these work well, some of these don't work as well. And we're going to continue to play with it, and you'll see it on the videos. So I have been Phil, the miniature model maker, and this was the follow-up to the Galeri Kaleido unboxing and first impressions I did yesterday. Please do hit that like and subscribe. It helps the channel reach other people who may want this information as well. This might be helpful to them. And remember that this is a hobby. If it doesn't bring you joy, don't do it. Be good to yourselves, okay? Bye-bye.